road to the Super Bowl. Every game on the schedule crucial, it take a toll. It don't matter if we at home or on the road. You try to tackle, our truck a sucker and take it soul. I'm staring at 4th and goal, gotta find an open hole. A linebacker just close a hole where I'm supposed to go. So now I'm thinking my centers are all pro, so I trust he can make a walk for wherever the ball go. Yeah, there's 5 seconds on the play clock. The crowd was loud, but they stopped. Now it's silent while they watch. They stand off in the red zone. All I see is red home. Watch me get this touchdown and this W and head home.
Welcome in, Cowboys Nation, to Game Day Live, the pregame show presented by Underdog Fantasy. Skywalker Still, Jesse Holley, divisional round, Cowboys, Niners, round 2. In round 2, you know that equals 4. And the last time the Cowboys at number 4 faced this team over there in Arlington, Texas, it really didn't end too well for the Cowboys. They got a shot at redemption in California.
Yes.
And I was told, it never rains in Southern California. But we're in the Bay, baby. We're in the Bay. And the forecast says sunny with a chance of rain. Dakota Prescott
that was
and the
professional.
Dallas Cowboys,
Yeah,
baby. You ready? Are you ready, Cowboys Nation? Let's do this thing. I'm amped up, brother. If you can't tell,
that was professional.
I'm amped up for this game, bro.
That was good.
That was good.
That was good. That's good. You've been working. You've been working.
What's good, Cowboys Nation? What's good, brother Jesse?
I'm good, man.
Are you excited for this? I don't know. I'm asking you that question.
No, I'm excited. Our excitement looks different, but it's the same.
You know, it definitely looks different. If y'all ain't been to a game, I'm telling y'all, you got to come to a game. It definitely looks different.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. This is, the great Ric Flair said, in order to be the man, you got to beat the man.
Yeah.
And this is another opportunity for the Dallas Cowboys to beat the man. We all know what happened last year at home at the hands of this 49ers team, and we were really looking at some things. The mind games have already begun. Trent Williams and company are already trying to get into the head of Brett Maher, not letting him kick his field goals from the middle of the football field. So they're trying to implement the mind games, and I'm not going to lie, if you're going to send anybody, send the
Trent.
biggest bully that you got, and that's Trent Williams. He's not one of these guys that's about lip service. He could probably back up what he says. But this is what you love about football. And at the end of the day, the most important thing is you can talk, you can taunt, you can do all of that stuff, but you got to play the game. And the outcome is going to come on the football field. And the Cowboys have a very good chance of righting the wrongs of what happened last year here in AT&T Stadium against the 49ers by taking them out today in their home stadium to head to a place that they have not been to in almost 27 years, an NFC championship game, and it all is in their hands to do what they got to do today against the San Francisco 49ers.
This game, it feels like it's flipped from last year when the Cowboys were hosting the Niners. They had, I don't want to say the momentum, but they were favorites, right?
Yes.
The target was on their backs. Now it's the Niners, 11-game win streak. The Brock Purdy, right, who's playing phenomenal for Mr. Irrelevant rookie quarterback. It feels like the Cowboys are the underdogs, and Micah Parsons talked about them embracing that underdog role, something that I wanted them to do for a long time. A lot of people call them the corporate Cowboys, right, because they kind of feel corporate. Well, I say this is a wrestling term here. The Rock was the corporate Rock. He was a heel. I say embrace it. Be a heel. Embrace that. And I think Micah Parsons is trying to get the Cowboys to embrace being an underdog. And I think that's what they should do coming out in this game today.
No, absolutely. And there's a different mindset when you go from being the hunted to being the hunter.
Yeah.
And I think now the Cowboys can find themselves in that position where you are now the hunter. And the Niners, they have all the things, all the pressure on them to continue their win streak, to try to get this thing to the next level. Continue to try to have Brock Purdy play at a very high level with an 11-game win streak right now. So the Cowboys really, in essence, is the hunter in this situation. Vegas gives the San Francisco 49ers a 4-point a 4-point lead right now,
yeah.
favorite right now to win this football game. So they have to have that mindset. The hunger has to stay there. My hope was last week that they didn't put so much energy and effort in getting over the hump of beating Tom Brady on the road that they don't have any hunger left for this weekend. So if that was the case, then all you had to do was pop in that tape from last year, and that should bring back that anger and that hunger for this football team.
And that's something that Dak talked about, J-Ron talked about, Micah. They all have talked about, hey, we have not forgot.
Yep.
And if you really look at how, this team has been formed, it's with that San Francisco game in mind.
Yeah.
It's about being bullied and being out physical was the buzzword, right? Coming out a lot of those losses last year, going into the draft, going into free agency. It was about getting more physical players and being a more physical team. And then can you implement that into your DNA? And this team has been more balanced from a run standpoint. They've used more tight ends this year. So they've tried to implement that. But we also want to make sure we don't try to play into the San Francisco's hands. And we'll talk about that today. But let's get to game day catch-ups and see who will be inactive today for the Dallas Cowboys and run down that list. No surprise, Jason Peters got hurt last week.
Yep.
He's 40 years old. I'm a man, I'm 40. Had a little hip situation. When you 40, you got hips.
Baby.
Listen, it's going to be a minute for him.
It's going to be a while.
We'll see what's up with Jason Peters. Peyton Hendershot popped up on the list, I think, yesterday and ruled him inactive. Yep. So, kind of a key guy in that 3 tight end situation. He'll be replaced by Sean McEwen. Big deal, little deal, no deal.
I think it's a deal.
Yeah.
I don't know big or little. I think it's in the middle of there because he's one of these guys. When you look who comes after Dalton Schultz, you'll see a lot of times Peyton Hendershot gets that opportunity. He's a viable pass catcher. They like to put in that 3 tight end set where he's a blocker and a receiver. They move him. So to not have him, it means now another guy has to step up. And maybe you don't feel as comfortable with a guy in certain packages because maybe McEwen maybe hadn't run them, or there were certain things that you saw that Hendershot did a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not the same, and so as a play caller, you're at times hesitant to go, do I call that now? And it might have worked for you had you had Hendershot in it. So not having him here, not the greatest loss, but there was something in there a little bit to say.
Yeah, a little small
you'd miss
something.
him. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Will Greer, obviously, Jabril Cox, Jalen Tolbert. And then these 2 defenders caught my eye again. Nashawn Wright will be out for the back-to-back weeks, and Quentin Bohanna. Now, Wright is out, and we saw the surprise wild card throw-in for Dan Quinn that he's been keeping in the tuck there, was Israel Mukuamu, who had a fantastic game in the playoffs. I think he had a good game early in the season, but this was his coming out party because it was the playoffs. And it looks like Izzy is going to get that shot again at slot corner probably. Yeah,
when you have the opportunity to go out there and make plays, you want to seize that moment. And I think that's what he did last week, Israel Mukuamu, who I'm talking about, getting into the game, playing in the slot, playing some outside, but really coming up with some huge plays defensively for the Cowboys. And they've been looking for a guy. So I think Dan Quinn said, hey, we're going to ride the hot hand in Israel Mukuamu. The big thing for him today is to continue to be disciplined in his alignment assignment and not fall for the eye candy. That's what that they want to do. And the thing that we'll get more into this thing when we talk about what they are as an offense for the Cowboys defense and guys like Israel Mukuamu, Kyle Shanahan wants to mess up what we call the count. Mm-hmm. When defenders are looking at guys offensively, they're always saying, okay, he's number 1, and I may have number 1 or number 2 or number 3, and however that breaks down. But when the ball is snapped and guys get moving and things get kind of a little bit hairy, you want to make sure that you maintain the count that you're supposed to have and not let guys roam free in the secondary. So it's a big matchup for Israel Mukuamu because once Kyle Shanahan in this offense, if they can find a mouse in the house, they're going to continue to attack that. So played a big game last week, got to step up and play a good game this week. Yeah,
and then Quentin Bohanna was the final inactive, but it looks like that Neville's going to be up. We're going to need a game from those defensive tackles. Let's jump right into that 49ers offense, though. You teased it right there. And going back and watching the Seahawks game, I literally tweeted out, man, I just got to laugh because he's filthy. Yeah. Kyle Shanahan is literally filthy. He's like a pitcher. I'm not a huge baseball fan as I used to be, but that has 5 different pitches, and they're all top-tier type pitches, man. Just absolutely filthy. And you talked about, let me see if I actually have the I don't have it up here right now, but you talked about the eye candy. Mm-hmm. What I like to attest with the eye candy is that they're looking for information.
Yes.
Right? And they're looking for leverage. Shanahan, there was one play where Kyle Juszczyk, motion, a lot of teams, or move, we'll just say that. There was some form of motion or movement 4 different times. 4 different times just to throw you off, throw your numbers off, throw your alignment off, throw your keys off, what have you. And that's going to be in my notes that I had prepared for the week. By the way, Cowboys Nation, obviously, as you can see, I'm fine, but I was sick this week, so I couldn't finish off the week. But I had in my notes, man, this dude not only just motions you, but he motions you to death.
Yes.
Like, it's coming every single play, pre-snap, post-snap action. You cannot take a play off in this Kyle Shanahan offense. You can't.
No, you can't. And that's a part of, like you said, it's a part of who he is. It's a part of that offense because the information is vital.
Yep.
And especially when you have a quarterback like Brock Purdy, who we'll talk about Mr. Irrelevant, the last pick, and what he's able to do. Well, the more information a quarterback can get, the better he is post-snap. Because now he's saying, well, I know what they're in. I know where guys are trying to come. And you want to catch guys, if you're creeping or you're going to change late in the game, you want to catch guys kind of in their switch. So they're looking for the information. They're looking to mess up your count. They're looking to see if you're going to be able to communicate throughout your entire defense what those checks are going to be. And if you do it enough throughout the course of the game, that maybe, just maybe, we can find a place. And you use a great name, Kyle Juszczyk. This is a guy who plays fullback / tight end. And he's not just a blocker.
No.
He's almost a tight end type of extension. So they'll throw him the ball up the seam. They'll throw him the ball down the sideline. They'll throw him the ball in screens. They'll give him the football. So there is nothing on their offense that is a viable option that they do not use. And they get the information from a lot of their pre-snap stuff so that now your count can be a little bit more confusing, and they can find those guys to get the ball in their hands right now to make plays.
Man, you talk about confusing. And I want to jump down a little bit. I think Dan Quinn is going to have to lean into the fact that Brock Purdy is a rookie, okay? He's a rookie that's playing in, his 7th or 8th game, something like that.
Yep.
Maybe not even 8, maybe. But Dan Quinn, I saw a stat this weekend that caught me, I don't say about surprise, but I was like, oh, wow. On the season, Dan Quinn disguised looks on 32% of coverages, which was 2nd in the NFL. Brock Purdy, who's a rookie, is going up against a defensive coordinator who, I don't know if you saw their version of Sounds of the Sideline for Tampa. Tom Brady was like, I don't know, man. That quote, end quote, I don't know, man. I don't know. I don't know. They said, hey, Tom, where's it coming from? I don't know. When's it coming? I don't know. You confuse Tom Brady.
Right.
I think you can confuse Brock Purdy, right? And I think Dan Quinn is going to have to live in that. I know, and it's going to be big. It's going to be big cat and mouse chess match because you might get caught, right? And if you get caught, it could be a big play. But I don't think you can stay in one certain thing because then Shanahan, who's on the other side, who coached with Dan Quinn, will adapt to that and just eat off of it. And one of the things that I noticed in that Seahawks game that I don't think the Cowboys can do, down in, down out, is you can't run cover. I mean, you can't run single high man all day. They will absolutely eat that up if you do it all day because they get guys on that deep over with the play action, hold your linebackers, and it could be a problem. So I think he's going to mix it up, confuse Brock Purdy. But I feel like if you can confuse Tom Brady, I think you can confuse Brock Purdy.
No, you're absolutely right, and that's what Dan Quinn must do. This isn't, if he can. Dan Quinn has to find a way. He has to find a way to confuse the rookie. He has to find a way to get guys home. He has to find a way to touch the rookie. Brock Purdy should feel every single time he takes a drop back or takes the ball with pass. He should feel the pressure, and then he should be able to look into that secondary and not know where guys are coming from. The thing that the Cowboys have been able to do this year is when they're able to kind of get into those multiple defensive back sets, when you're talking about having Hooker and Curse and Donovan Wilson, and now you're adding Israel McQuamu, and now you're adding Deron Bland, and of course you're going to have Trayvon Diggs. You're talking about now 7 at times of your defensive players are defensive backs.
Yeah.
And so the ability to kind of switch and move and have guys, we always talked about when Dan Quinn was drafting, he was talking about, I need length, I need size. Because now he wants guys that have to throw through windows. He wants guys that now have to be able to, eliminate some of that airspace just with their simple size alone. So when Dan Quinn can get an opportunity to have those safeties or a lot of those defensive back players out there. Now it gives him a chance to be multiple in his sets and have guys be interchangeable when you're facing an offense like this who uses George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk, who uses Greg Jennings, who use, of course, Deebo Samuel, Kyle Juszczyk. Everybody is utilized in this San Francisco offense, so having 5 and 6 and 7 defensive backs to match them in all of the different looks is going to be crucial and vital for Dan Quinn in this defense.
But what they're going to have to do is defend that dang on run.
Yes, sir.
They're going to have to tackle. They're going to have to deal with Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell when they decide to use him. And speaking of Christian McCaffrey, since he's come over to the San Francisco 49ers, I think he leads the NFL in scrimmage yards.
Yes.
So, they utilize him in a multitude of different ways, which is why I talked about the defensive tackles may be your most important group this week. I know that sounds crazy when you got Brandon Ayuk, you got Deebo Samuel, you got George Kittle. Like, those guys are legitimate guys that can get you in the passing game. But it all starts with the run action, right? I say this all the time. You don't necessarily have to run for 150 yards every game.
Right.
What you just need to do is have the threat of the run, and that means the run action. And nobody does the run action better than the San Francisco 49ers probably in the last 5 to 6 years or however long Shanahan's been there. So if these defensive tackles can redirect these running backs and allow these defensive backs to flow and tackle, because they got to tackle.
Yes.
They got to tackle these dudes. And when I say running backs, let me throw Deebo in there.
Oh, yeah.
Because plays, Deebo is going to get tosses. They're going to pull the tight end. They're going to pull Juszczyk. They're going to pull Trent Williams.
He scored on a run play last year against us.
Exactly. After that turnover, yeah. They're going to make your DBs, your cornerbacks, they're going to make your defensive ends commit to this run game. So Dallas, their defensive tackles, the edges, the line, everyone has to commit. It has to be a rally type of mentality, because if you can do that, now you can put this game in Brock Purdy's hands where it hasn't really been yet. It really hasn't been, and that's kudos to them, but it hasn't been in Brock Purdy's hands, and that's where Dan Quinn can shine.
I think you have to remember Kyle Shanahan. You got to kind of look at where he comes from, who his daddy is. His daddy was kind of almost instrumental in implementing the zone run scheme. Yeah. So when you look at what they want to do, he's gotten a lot of that from his dad. Being able to, Mike Shanahan for a lot of years, go all the way back to the Terrell Davis days back in Denver. Like, that is the foundation of what he's able to do. They want to run the football in many different looks. They want to use that zone running scheme. They want to kind of have guys cut back. They want you to overcommit. Yep. They want you to see things happening. But that's who he is at his core. He is his daddy's son. And so they're going to try to run the football.
Season on
yeah,
it,
he said, listen, Dad, I'm going to take what you started, and I'm going to put a little bit of 2.0. I'm going to put a little Dobo on it. I'm going to put a little Sasson on that thing.
Slap
a little bit.
Yeah,
little Tony's on that thing and give it a little bit of kick to it. And that's what he's able to do. So that's the core of what he wants to do. And again, he'll use Kyle Juszczyk, he'll use Christian McCaffrey, he'll use Mitchell, and he will use Deebo Samuel. So you never really get a chance to take a breath with this offense, because guys are always coming in, and all the guys that come in will be utilized at some point in time today. So
a matchup that I was thinking about this week, which is really interesting. Last year, George Kittle coming into that game, a lot of us were worried because, tight ends usually give the Cowboys trouble over the years, but last year it was Jaron Kearse who was doing really well against tight ends. Jaron's a bit nicked up now, right? He's dealing with the MCL sprain. He will play today. He's been dealing with the knee all year. He hasn't been as good in man coverage against tight ends this year, but he's shown up in zone. Israel McQuam, do you feel like he could be up to the task? Another 6'4", long, I think he probably could be a better cover guy right now than Jaron due to the injuries. Plus, he played corner, so he can deal with a little bit of the speed aspect of George Kittle, but can he deal with the physical aspect of George Kittle? Just something that, Cowboys Nation and myself have been thinking about this week in regards to me. Do you think that Izzy could match up with Kittle in this round?
I think he could. I really do think he could. But when I look at what George Kittle did to us last year,
he was more so in the blocking department.
And that's where it's important. Yeah. Because when you go back and you look at that game last year, and it stood out, it was a blaring thing that stood out to me. George Kittle, Brandon Ayuk were kind of almost set out to block Micah Parsons. And it wasn't that they actually pancaked him or blocked him or really
make him work.
It was, can I get guys athletic enough to just make Micah Parsons run the loop or have to deal with me for a second to get my backs or my offensive linemen up to the next level. And George Kittle did that masterfully last year. Brandon Ayuk did it masterfully last year. So I look at that this year, and now, do I think Izzy can kind of handle George Kittle? Yes, I do. I think that's a possibility. But also, we have to make sure that those guys aren't killing us in the run blocking game, because they did a lot of that last year, deployed those guys out to block Micah Parsons, because they were saying he's going to get around offensive linemen in space. But what about a guy who can actually move with him? Cannot stay with front of him with the power, but just make him move a little bit athletically to now that he's not just coming downhill creating the chaos. So look for that in this game today. Those guys like Brandon Ayuk, like George Kittle saying, we're gonna take you out of the game and solely have you working on Micah Parsons in the blocking game.
And I listened to Micah the other day. It sounds like they're going to move him around a little bit in this game as opposed to letting them kind of key on him. And I think that's a good decision. You know, Cowboys Nation, we've been kind of talking about this for months, right? I like more when they move Micah around, right, as opposed to keeping that defense in. I feel like if you keep him in one place, Kyle Shanahan would just pick on that.
Yeah.
I mean, and it sounds crazy. Pick on Micah. Yeah, man. I mean, if you run at certain guys, all they can do is get bullied by 2 or 3 dudes or, you know, run away from him the other way, but he's still getting a body on him. So I think they got to move Micah around and allow him to be able to defend 1, 2, maybe 3 areas of the field, depending on the coverage of the call. But I do know this. If Micah is going to play primarily defensive end and rush the passer, you're going to need Leighton Vander Esch and Anthony Barr to have impact games and performances similar to what they had last week against these running backs, specifically Christian McCaffrey. Okay? Christian McCaffrey is in my opinion, Tony Powell, Christian McCaffrey, I feel like they can do the same exact things, but they use him a little bit more and a little bit better, I think, than the Cowboys do. And they try to, man, I've seen Christian McCaffrey be a lead blocker. I've seen him throw the ball. I've seen him do everything in that offense. But the Cowboys, this could be strength on strength. They give up the fourth fewest receptions to running backs, but then you have Christian McCaffrey, who leads the league in scrimmage yards. This strength on strength, do you have confidence that the Cowboys can at least make it a little bit difficult in the passing department for Christian?
You know, I do, but it all comes down to the point before that. It's the MPP, right? It's the Micah Parsons problem.
Yeah.
If Micah Parsons can be who he's been for a large majority of this year, and you create that havoc on the inside, because when you're talking about using Christian McCaffrey, whether it's a kind of return route or it's the Texas route sometimes, you know, you want to get in the face of Brock Purdy so those throws aren't able to be made. The thing that I think Micah Parsons did, and this is a combination of he and Dan Quinn and the coaches kind of getting together, was not only did Micah Parsons has 9 pressures last week, the most pressure that Tom Brady's had on him all year long, he had 2 or 3 pass deflections.
Yes.
And I think that's also key as well, is understanding that when you're using me in different positions, that if I can't get home, that I have to still be getting my hands up, making guys throw around me. And I don't think Brock Purdy's the guy who throws from all different type of platforms to be accurate. He wants a clear picture where he wants to throw the football. So when Micah Parsons coming, you know, he's good enough to get his hands up, deflect the football, and sometimes when you deflect the football in that area, it leads to turnover. So for Dallas to be good at defending Christian McCaffrey, it's going to still be a part of the Micah Parsons problem and allowing him to get after the quarterback so that situation doesn't happen.
We probably should include Debo too, man. They have packages where they'll put Debo and McCaffrey in the backfield, or they'll motion Debo into the backfield and they'll have McCaffrey be a lead with the tight end with used. It's really a difficult scheme to deal with. It just is, man. But before we switch to the other side, Cowboys Nation, make sure y'all stick around, man, for the A to Z Sports. I'm sorry, for the Underdog Fantasy Pick'ems Divisional round. It's the playoffs, man. You know, I had to come back with a 5. I missed out last week on like 1 possession. If the Cowboys would have just milked the clock at 4 minutes, well, we'd have went home with a lot of cash. A whole lot of cash. So I came back with another 5er. I'm telling you, if you don't want to do 5, that's cool, but I'm really confident at least 40. So make sure y'all hold tight, stick around for that. But let's get back into it and let's flip it real quick to the other side of the ball, okay, and talk about the Cowboys offense against this 49ers defense. It feels like this 49ers defense amongst media, amongst this, I don't know what to call it. It just seems like this aura of this almighty defense that can't be beat, that can't be gotten or whatever, right? But then I go and I pop on the Raiders tape, and I pop on the Seattle tape. I'm like, Jarrett Stidham. Is that his name?
Stidham, yeah.
Stidham. Mm-hmm. Ha, 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 Stidham. Stidham. Ha, 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 Stidham. Geno Smith. They was getting a little busy on this defense. And I'm looking at how they did it, and I'm like, I think the Cowboys need to implement a little bit more of this. And I listened to Dak Prescott talk about, hey, man, I popped on that tape from last year, and I was upset at myself that I allowed CeeDee Lamb to have one-on-ones that I didn't attack, or I missed this or I missed that, right? He took accountability for the game, as he normally does. I don't really see that being an issue in this game. I feel like they're going to put the ball in their playmakers' hands, and we can just look at what happened last week. However, it's all about, do we trust that to happen on consecutive weeks? Because we haven't really seen that in consecutive big games from our offensive coordinator and quarterback.
Yeah, we talked about it in our post-game show last week. What a masterful game Kellen Moore called last week. What an impressive game. To me, probably one of the best games that I've ever seen Dak Prescott play in one of the most high-pressure moments that he was in to get that monkey off his back with the way he played against Tampa Bay. But did the bag get packed? Did the Louis duffel get packed? Did they put it not on the plane because we got that gas? Because Kellen Moore had the gas last week. He had that yayo. He had that yayo in the bag. He had that white girl, that Christina Aguilera, and it wasn't stepped on.
No.
He had that thing with that Frank Lucas said, call it whatever you want.
Especially in the red zone.
He had call it whatever you want. Just don't call it blue magic.
Facts.
Yeah. They had the blue magic last week. Shout out to you, all my people out there with the blue magic. You know what I'm talking about. But he had the blue magic, and we said, listen, you got to pack the blue magic. You can't put the blue magic on the plane. They got the dogs.
No, you got to drive that thing.
You got to drive that. You got to put that on the. You got to keep that in the passenger side. You got to ride shotgun with you.
Like a '98 Civic or something.
Stick shift.
Stick shift.
You got to just hit that thing.
Roll the windows down like this.
Yeah, and you got to drive it to the bay.
Yeah.
And that is the biggest question and concern for us today is, did the bag make it?
Yep.
Did the bag make it, or did they fumble it? Or did they leave it? Or did TSA say, hold, come to the back. Let us look in this bag. We saw something on the camera. Because if they bring the bag, if Kellen tucked the Louis and he brought it with him, then, this Niners defense is in for a hell of a day.
Yes.
But if Kellen decided that we're not bringing the Louis and we bring in the Jan Sport, you're gonna have a long day. So that's where we're at. Can Kellen Moore continuously do this? And it's been back and forth all year long. He have a good game and he not have a good game. And we talked about we can overcome if the offensive coordinator glitches and the quarterback is in rhythm. We can kind of have the offensive coordinator be in rhythm and the quarterback at some time glitch. Can't have them both.
Especially not against really good teams.
So the question is, what bag did Kellen Moore pack, and what Dakota, what Dakota found his way to San Francisco? Because if we get anything remotely close to what we saw last week against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers,
yeah, we have a son.
Now you're talking about now you're cooking with fish grease, and I like the chances of the Cowboys if that's the case.
So what's in that bag, and what comes in that bag to me is things that
profit. It's profit in that bag. Blue magic is in the bag. Blue magic brings profit.
Load up.
Blue magic brings profit.
So listen, what specifically is in that bag that works for the Cowboys team actually works against the Niners, and it's play action, and it's the pre-snap and post-snap action. These are things we've been asking the Cowboys to do all year on a consecutive basis because that's what they excel at. I popped on that film and I said, the Raiders was doing some pre-snap stuff and some play action stuff and was getting at them. In fact, heard on the radio this week, in play action, the San Francisco 49ers are giving up over 8 yards per carry when they do a play action. And, guess what? Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys just so happen to be one of the best play action teams when they decide to actually use it.
Right.
And more specifically in play action, and I'm not saying you got to do this all game, but under center, Jesse. I feel like when I watched that Niners game last year, we kind of just repeated what we were doing at the end of the season against Arizona and the Saints. Shotgun run, shotgun play. No, I'm talking about get under center and make Joey Bosa and Arik Armstead have to think for one split second, is this going to be a run or not? Is this going to be a boot or not?
And let me tell you why it's different between having the shotgun play action and the under the center play action. Because now the quarterback and the running back in shotgun are standing 70 yards away from the line of scrimmage, which means they're standing 12 yards away from the linebackers. So now I can be a linebacker and see, because we're 12 yards apart, I can see the action happen, and I don't have to fully commit right now because you still got 5 yards before the running back gets to the line of scrimmage. But when you're under center, now what have I done? I've closed the airspace between you and I, and when I go to turn my back to hand off, you now have to come and commit.
Because that's what your natural instinct is.
So now what before may have been a kind of a slow read step from a linebacker is a full committed 2 steps up. And now you have to take 2 extra steps to get back to your original spot and then get beyond that. So you're talking about now the reaction, the eye vision of the linebacker being able to see that from a 12-yard distance opposed to a 7-yard distance when he's under center and turns his back to the offense. And now you can kind of disguise and hide the football, and they have to wait until you turn around to figure out, okay, the ball's not in the running back's hands, it's in the quarterback's hands. And you watched last week when Dak Prescott did the ball handling, when he handed it off, it was so sweet. It fooled the cameraman, it fooled everybody. He booted out and he scored a touchdown. So that gives you a little bit of understanding between what the linebackers see when they're both standing up 7 yards away from the football, and the action is happening there. Their eyes can get back to their keys and still have enough space to react and either make the tackle or drop back into coverage, opposed to when you're under center and turn your back. Now they don't truly understand it, and they have to make a decision right now, and they have to get back into the passing lane. Then you have a slight advantage because everything that you have is going towards them while they're backing up. So that's a little bit of the difference between the two from under center and in shotgun, and that's why the Cowboys have success when they do it from under center.
And that guy, Fred Warner, is a guy you have to absolutely disguise. Very well put there, because if Fred Warner, if he knows where the play is going, and we talked about this in I'll call it the green room, but in pre-roll, right? Where if you go watch that film last year, Fred Warner and D'Amico Ryans literally schemed up against Dak Prescott and Kellen Moore. And let me just bring us back here. What I mean by schemed up, week 1, and just follow me, Cowboys Nation. I came out after that game and said, you could tell that Todd Bowles told those linebackers, don't care about play action.
Yeah.
They're not going to stick to the run. They're not going to be committed to the run. Just get in your lanes. Just fall back, get into your passes. And that created congestion. When you have 2 or 3 guys into a sea of 6 or 7, it's hard to find that lane. If you go back and watch in the Niners game, there was a specific play. Fred Warner didn't give a damn about what else was happening around him. He was peeling off and was taking away a specific read because he saw on film this is what happens every single day on time. And instead of adapting to it, we ran the same play. I think Kirk called it out 4 or 5 different times in that game, and Fred Warner did the same thing every single time. And it may be one successful time that happened for the Cowboys. So I think if you get under center, because every time it happened, they were in shotgun. Get under center, make Fred Warner have to guess for 1 second, or Greenlaw or whomever. They got really good linebackers, by the way. Make these guys have to pause for 1 second. Now what happens, you'll get Schultz running maybe a stick route or something, or out and up type of route. A stick nod is what I was thinking of. You'll get T.Y. Hilton, who reads that stuff greatly, right? Yep. T.Y. doesn't need 5, 6, 7 catches. He gets you 2 important ones, though. Right. First down, we convert. You'll get C.D. Lamb, if he's in that slot, matched up against Jimmy Ward on a deep over. Listen, I have all due respect with Jimmy Ward. All due respect for him. But I'm not going to call him a mouse and house because I have respect for him. I'm not going to, with all due respect, Jimmy Ward.
This is, if you guys don't know, this is classic Skywalker Steel stuff. He starts it out with all due respect, comma, with disrespect. Every single time. With all due respect, comma.
He's not lying.
A load of disrespect. So here it is. I'm not going to disrespect Jimmy Ward, comma.
But C.D. Lamb on Jimmy Ward is a mismatch, bro. I'm sorry. Like, I'm not going to say it's a Twinkie Toes mismatch like from the Giants game. If you just had to be here earlier in the season. But Jimmy Ward's a safety that can do some nickel things, and he is their nickel corner. Okay, so he's going to come down. He's going to play your T.Y. if he's in the slot, or who's mostly in the slot, C.D. Lamb. So if you can just get a little cheat, right, with the linebacker coming up, now you're telling me I get some room created with Jimmy Ward on C.D. Lamb? I'll take that all day, man. And I saw a stat that came out, or not even a stat, it was kind of an opinion that, the Niners make it difficult to throw across the middle of the field because they usually have a middle of the field closed style of defense. Well, they did that last year, but we just didn't take advantage of it on the outsides. I say attack them, obviously, deep, because that's where they've been giving up some of their big plays. DK Metcalf got some big plays. TJ Lockett, TJ Lockett, right? Is it?
Yeah,
Lockett.
sure. Yeah, Lockett.
Lockett got some.
Tyler Lockett.
Tyler Lockett got some plays. Darren Waller got some. Devontae Adams. Jarrett Stidham. Javonte Adams got some deep plays. So attack them out there. Make those safeties have to commit away from the middle of the field. And then next thing you know, boom, you're hitting T.Y. Hilton or you're hitting C.D. Lamb deep. Because they're going to pay attention to C.D. Lamb. But if you can make those safeties have to defend the deep ball, which we didn't make them do last year, and make these linebackers have to guess, I think your offense can operate as long as they block Nick Bosa.
And here's the thing that we talked about, last weekend. Dak Prescott hit 8 different receivers in that football game. He wasn't locked in on just 1 or 2 guys. The ball was spread around, around the park efficiently and effectively. We talk about blue magic and taking profit. That's the one thing that I love that Dak Prescott did last week. He was so assertive and so demonstrative on saying the ball's going right here, right now, and he got it out quick and he got it out decisively to his playmakers. And what that does for you now is it gives the defense so many different things to look at. Because guys like Fred Warner and Greenlaw and Jimmy Ward and Tart and the rest of those guys, if you key in on one thing, then now you're stuck on that. Those guys are excellent football players in between the ears. So you got to make sure you spread this thing out a little bit to C.D. Lamb, a lot to C.D. Lamb, a little bit to Schultz, a little bit to Michael Gallup, a little bit to T.Y. Hilton. I mean, get the ball around. Tony Pollard, use him.
Yes.
Use every single body like the Niners do at their disposal. So now guys have to pay attention to anybody. You said something that was really important about guys like Fred Warner. When they key on something, that they'll go to it right now. And I think one of the things that the Cowboys tend to do a lot on third down is, they set it up and they clear it out for those slant routes. Always on third down, they always try to run either what we call tosser, which is 2 slants on one side, or toss 1 slant. And so they go to look at that a lot of times. So look for those DBs to try to jump that at some point in time. So that's where Dak Prescott has to be clean and precise with his throws. You can't be throwing an out route back inside. You can't be throwing a slant ahead of the guy. Put it on him, allow him to make the catch. And the receivers, they have to do their part as well. Balls can't come off their hands. Guys can't be trying to catch the ball with their body and hit it up, because they have 11. When you pop on the tape, I always say this, even when I watch them, it looks like at times there are 12 guys on the football field in that defense.
Nico got them playing.
Everybody rallies to the football. There won't be a lot of open space for you to roam if you don't do what you're supposed to do. So absolutely, Dak has to continue with the precision that he had last week against this defense, because if you give them an opportunity, they will make a play on you.
Yeah, my bad, man. This sun just blinded the heck.
Yeah, it's all good.
You got to move over just a little bit. So their defense rallies, right? But it starts up front, right? With Nick Bosa, Rick Armstead, and those guys, they got about good 5 pass rushers too that can get you. I don't think they lost much with Arden Key being out. Arden Key was a huge difference maker for the Cowboys, or for the Niners last year in that matchup at AT&T Stadium. But Nick Bosa, you're going to have to do something about him, I think. And I think the best way to combat a guy who, let's just be honest, he's going to wreck your game. I should say wreck your game. He's going to make some plays or what have you.
Yeah.
Is to do more draws, do more screens, do more, quick game a little bit, just to throw them off. Just again, when you get under center, you make them think. When you do a draw, you make them think. Just make Nick Bosa have to say, I don't know what's coming on this specific play. What the problem last year, Cowboys go down early, which is why in importance to get off to a hot start. They just teed it back, put their ears back and teed off on the quarterback, knowing these dudes ain't going to commit to the run. These guys are not going to stay committed to being balanced. They're not going to really show any real run action. So the Cowboys got to do 3 things. More screens, I think, in this game. I mean, productive screens. If they don't work, they don't work, because the Cowboys can't run screens for nothing. But draws, like they've been pretty successful with draws. And I don't mean 3rd and 5 on your, what I'm saying, what happened in Week 18, right? Now, that may work here and there, but I mean, like, hey, it's second and long or second and 5. Maybe a draw will work here or something. But you know what I'm saying. Just draws. And the final one was to make Nick Bosa in this pass rush just have to think a tick seconds more. Play action, counts at the line of scrimmage, right? Mix up your counts, mix up your cadence, all that. Use everything at your dang disposal. I saw Joe Burrow today, and Tony Romo talked about it. He had a cadence where it was a delayed silent count that got them to jump offside on 3rd and 3 first down. Little stuff like that.
Right. No, absolutely. And I agree with you 100%. I think ways that you get Nick Bosa off balance, you have to run at him some. And not to run at him and think you're going to dominate him, but to run at him to wear him down a little bit. You got to implement somehow, some way, 11-on-11 football and let the quarterback use his legs.
Dak need to run
a couple RPOs will definitely leave him in the kind of a situation. Again, and then I think the most important thing is don't get behind the sticks on first down. Don't find yourself in those long distances because that's when he really gets after you. And don't be arrogant enough when he lines up at times, over Tyron that, we can just man him up 1-to-1 all day, or over Tyler Smith. Either one of those guys, the future Hall of Famer or a guy who we really like. Don't be arrogant enough to think, we can just block him one-on-one all football game, because you can't. And that's a fact. And I like Tyron and I like Tyler. But the fact of the matter is you don't want to do that all day. And conversely, they don't want to do the same thing with Micah Parsons. They're not going to be ignorant to the fact of that as well. Yeah. So those are some of the ways that you do that with the guy like Nick Bosa. So he is susceptible to getting beat. Use those runs to get outside of him. Use those runs to make him have to think a little bit more. But again, if you find yourself on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 7, 3rd and 10, those down and distances, now you're setting yourself up. And he's one of those guys, when he gets home, he's opportunistic. Like, he grabs one hand, he's trying to strip, he's trying to make the big splash play. He ain't just trying to get the sack, he's trying to get a strip sack fumble. He's trying to get the ball back for his team. So you got to be careful when you line up against Nick Bosa, because he's the guy who also has that Micah Parsons motor where he goes every single snap, and you just can't take a play off with him.
It's probably going to win Defensive Player of the Year.
Yep.
So you're playing against a Defensive Player of the Year, but they're also playing against Defensive Player of the Year candidate.
Yep.
2 years in a row in Micah Parsons. All right, let's go ahead and flip this thing on to our Underdog Fantasies Pick'em. I told y'all the fantasy season might be over for many of you. It might be over for everyone, really. But it doesn't have to end. You can head on over to Underdog Fantasy Sports. Use the promo code ATOZ. They will match the deposit up to $100, and you can play the Pick'em entries. It's so much fun, man. I do this every week, and sometimes I do it for non-Cowboys games just because you can win money very easily, Cowboys Nation. All you got to do is just pick at least 3 players, one on each side of the ball. Pick whether it's higher or lower in their stats, and you win money. It's that simple. And you can use insurance. I like to use that just in case you mess up or whatnot. You get some insurance, you still win some money. So let's get to it, Jesse Holley. I got 5 picks today. I'm all about winning money. Let's talk about it. Dak Prescott, higher or lower, and play along, Cowboys Nation. 271.5 total yards.
Higher.
Yeah. That would be, if he gets in around the 300-yard range, I think he'd be right up there with Pat and Stidham, who torched them in this season. So they have had a lot of guys do it. I see why they went with that, but I'm with you. I got higher. I think this is – I know we need the run game, but I do think this is going to be Dak Prescott. Like this postseason run is going to be about Dak Prescott.
Yes, it is. It 100% is. This thing will either continue or end with Dak Prescott. Yeah. And he's going to have to be the one today that truly sets apart himself from the rest of the quarterbacks. Josh Allen went out today and lost against Cincinnati Bengals. If you want to be in that conversation, and we'll talk about, all right, now we've given Josh Allen a pass for a little while, right?
Yeah,
you got to start. Dak, if you want to go the opposite way, if you want to say, all right, we've kind of kept Dak out of that conversation for a while, now it's time to put him in that conversation, today's the day to go and do that. So I think higher for him at 271.5.
You go out here and do probably half of what you did. He had 5 touchdowns. Half of what you did is about 2 or 3, right? 5 touchdowns last week. If you do half of that this week against that defense and walk away with a dub, I think the narrative changes for Dak Prescott. Most people already believe he's a really good quarterback, but you talk about the different modes, the different levels of what people believe of you. Or quarterbacks are made in regular season, but they're built in the playoffs. Is that what you said? Or built in the regular season?
Made in the playoffs.
Made in the playoffs.
Yep.
This is that game. On the road against this defense, against a team that beat you last year, If he comes out and has a great game and wins this, you're talking about putting him in another tier. You have to, right?
Yep.
Tony Pollard, higher or lower, 70.5 rushing and receiving yards.
Higher.
Come on, man. I'm about getting your money, so just hang tight with me.
Then
That's
you got to
easy.
explain that one. Higher.
Higher. Come on.
Higher.
Jake Ferguson. This is the other one from last week that we hit on one play. And listen, about money, higher or lower, 4.5 receiving yards.
You got to take the higher on this
Come
one.
on,
I mean, one play. That's an option route,
one
right?
catch.
One catch. One catch.
No
No, he may
pay-
only have one catch.
I only have one. He had one last week.
Yeah, that's all we
31
need.
yards.
So,
No Peyton Henderson shot. So Jake is probably. I mean, Jake's already been tight end too. And
but he moves up. He moves up even more in order of operation.
Exactly. So that's easy money. Come on now. Now let's go to the other guy. We ain't talk a lot about Brock Purdy today, but Brock Purdy, higher or lower, a half interception, basically meaning will he throw a pick or not?
That's a good one.
I went higher. I think he's gonna throw one.
I mean, you can't. I mean, it's either he does or he doesn't, right? It's
Does or he doesn't. That's all it is. It just needs one or none.
Yeah, I'm gonna say he throws one. I'm gonna say Micah comes in, tips it up,
Something like that.
and gets an interception.
I just think Dan Quinn, man, like Brady could have threw some, but Brady's Brady.
Right.
Brady's seen. I seen this. I seen it. So Brady knew. All right, I'm not going to try this. Brock swashbuckling. Remember the swashbuckling Brock? I'm telling you, man. Brock don't give up on the play. He's running around. He's trying to make something happen. He's going, and he finds guys. That's why it's going to be imperative to cover for a long time because he's going to try to make plays. But Brock Purdy, I think, is going to eventually throw one in the traffic. He did it a couple times last week in Seattle, and they just didn't come down with it. Guess who leads the league in turnovers? Cowboys. Yeah. So I think the Cowboys will get one from Brock Purdy. I got higher on that.
Okay, I like it.
Another one here, Kyle Juszczyk. I'm all about the bread, man. Getting easy money. 3.5 receiving yards.
Yes, higher.
I think he gets a catch.
Yeah, I think he might. Kyle Juszczyk might beat this in the first. Maybe in their first drive, the first time the night starts of football, he might beat this in a little.
They'll do some play
right
action.
In the flat. He'll be right in the flat.
Yeah.
Boom. He'll get it. He'll get 4 or 5 yards. That'll be taken care of. Like you can get a lot of these taken care of, like in the first couple drives, right? Like you can get Ferguson taken care of. You can get Juszczyk taken care of. Boom in the first drive of each of these teams, get those guys the ball right now, and you can maybe sometimes even get Brock Purdy taken care of early too. Just get an early pick on him.
And if you're not as confident, you can't hit the insurance button. And if you hit all 5, you still win a ton of money. But if you miss one, you win like 2.5, whatever you put in. So it is a lot of bread out there to be made. These are easy picks to me, Cowboys Nation. Make sure y'all use them. And if you win, man, like I said, hit up Jesse, hit me up, send it to us on Twitter, man, and we'll promote it. All right. Plus, we'll look at it for some more information for maybe you watch basketball. I don't do too much of that betting. So, but look, we're here, Jesse.
Yeah.
We are 5 minutes away from the biggest game of Dak Prescott, the biggest game of Ezekiel Elliott, Michael Parsons. Everybody's career in that locker room, maybe sans, McCarthy and those guys and Dan Quinn who've been in Super Bowls, right? This is the biggest game of their career, man. You've played against San Fran. You've had a career-defining moment against San Fran. I mean, seriously, you're in history of Cowboys and 49ers history. It's the 9th time I believe they'll be matched up in the playoffs. We don't talk about this matchup enough in rivalries, but it should be up there in NFL history rivalries, man, to talk about the importance of getting a victory, of making yourself known or made in this type of game.
No, it gives you that awesome feel of nostalgia when you look back to what this was in the 90s, and then it's kind of trickled its way through the 2000s. And, of course, I've had my moment at, closing down the old Candlestick Park. But this is always going to be a good matchup. This is always going to be good on good, and no place like the playoffs does this matchup mean so much to people. And this is the only thing that's standing in between you and your destiny. If you're going to go, if you're going to go to the championship, the NFC championship, the road goes to the San Francisco 49ers. And I think this is an opportunity for those guys to go out there and prove to not only to the world, but to themselves that you're good enough to beat anybody, anywhere, anytime. And I think that puts you in the conversation. You want to get talked about those around those 90 teams, those Emmitt Smith, Troy Aikman, Michael Irvin, Nate Newton, Charles Haley teams. This is how you get there. You get to the AFC Championship by taking out one of your longest rivals in the San Francisco 49ers.
This year has been about getting monkeys off your back, right? We talked about, can you in round 1, the wild card round, can you do something you've never done, beat Tom Brady? Check. Can you do something you haven't done since 92? Win a road playoff game? Check. Last time they won a road playoff game was in 1992 against the 49ers. Can they do it again? And I want to leave you guys with this right here, Cowboys Nation. Shout out to Can't Guard Danny on TikTok. To get this dub, do whatever it takes. And we'll see y'all at halftime.
I fought my way out of that cave. Became Iron Man. Realized I loved you. I know I said no more surprises, but I was really hoping to pull off one last one.
Clean fracture of his throwing thumb. He is now going to be
The
out
world has
indefinitely.
changed.
Cooper Rush, who had some moments last year.
None of us can go back. All we can do is our best. And sometimes the best that we can do is to start over.
Hope and believe it is Dak Prescott time once again.
Dak Prescott is not one of the top 10 quarterbacks.
Slightly above average, can't carry a team to a win, needs a lot.
I saw all these people die.
In agreement with the Dallas Cowboys on a trade for Amari Cooper.
I keep telling everybody they should move on. Some do, but not us.
Even if there's a small chance, we owe this to everyone who's not in this room to try.
Throws it to left side, Pollard.
We will.
Just pressure, Lawrence got it.
Whatever it takes. Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.
Whatever it takes.